Sorry if this sounds very pessimistic, I'm still very sensitive about all of this, but I think you'll understand better why I feel this way when I explain it to you. I'm 31 years old. I met my wife, who is also nearly 30, 10 years ago when we were both in college. We were polar opposites in a way. I was quiet and reserved, always in my dorm studying and reading. She was a very social woman who needed to interact with everyone. Her personality could be described as one that draws attention, so it wasn't hard for her to make friends. She loved going out and having fun, you know, that kind of person. Her social media was filled with cocktail shots, group photos, and selfies at restaurants. Our relationship shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. We had the usual ups and downs, some disagreements and fights, but nothing out of the ordinary for a couple. I really felt like we were going to make it. We got married 2 years after graduating. I landed a decent job, and she took some time to decide how she wanted to proceed with her career. I didn't mind at the time, I was earning enough. She had studied education in college but decided she didn't like her job prospects. So I supported her while she figured out what to do with those new skills. At first, it felt like a team effort. She talked about wanting to start a business or go back to school, and I believed her. That's what marriage is about, supporting each other and backing each other's plans. Well, a few years went by, and nothing changed. She still hadn't found anything, nor had she tried very hard. She just jumped from one idea to another with no concrete results, only to abandon them later. Meanwhile, I worked hard, something I was used to thanks to my upbringing. My job covered the household expenses and supported both of us. I often talked to her about this, telling her she needed to focus, find her plan, and execute it. She always reassured me that she was about to figure it out, but looking back, I realized she was just buying time. Some might think I was enabling her, but it was a really delicate issue in our house. We often fought, and I was frustrated by her lack of direction. She seemed to start something and then abandon it after a few months because it didn't feel right. That's why I was a bit skeptical when she told me she wanted to start studying law. She could tell I wasn't convinced, which I think is normal given her history, but she assured me she was serious. It turned out she had applied and been accepted. She even showed me an acceptance letter. All she needed from me was to pay the tuition, and she would be a law student. I was so excited that she was finally making a decision that I immediately agreed. On the other hand, it was a good career to pursue. At that time, she told me the semester would start in about 3 months. I tried to stay on top of things, asking her if she had everything she needed. I really wanted her to succeed in law school. I didn't want her to have the chance to back out again. She told me she was anxious to start, and I believed her completely. It wasn't until the semester supposedly began that I noticed strange behavior. She went out quite often but never seemed as busy as I would have expected from a law student. I've never studied law, but I imagine it's as hard or harder than what I studied. I also never saw her reading. When I asked her about her classes, she said everything was going well and that she wasn't studying because they were still covering introductory topics. That seemed reasonable to me, and I believed her. The problem was, she was going out almost daily. I didn't have any real reason to suspect she was lying to me. If I asked her about her classes or her day, she always had a story ready, classmates, professors, and a whole narrative that was consistent and believable. You know how your partner tells you about their day and their classmates, and you start to feel like you know those people. That's how it was for me with her classmates. The only problem was that none of those people existed. I realized this when she started getting careless. She began coming home late, telling me she had study group meetings at night. Once again, this seemed legitimate. That was until one night when she came home late, clearly tipsy. She gave me the same story about the study group and said they had gone out for drinks afterward. This time, I didn't buy it. She had never come home this late or drunk before. I got a little confrontational and asked her where her textbooks were. At first, she stammered, then said she had left them behind, claiming a friend had picked them up for her. I knew in my gut she was lying to my face. So, I asked her to show me some pictures she had taken with her friends that night. Even as drunk as she was, she looked surprised. She stammered, saying she hadn't taken any pictures. At that moment, I was completely certain she was lying. Whenever we went out together, she always took dozens of pictures, of herself, of us together, and of her food. There was no way she had gone out with friends and hadn't taken a single picture. I made my disbelief clear and asked her if she had really gone out with friends. She insisted she had and started naming the same people she had mentioned before. She became so indignant and tearful that I actually began to believe her and feel bad. We had a small argument about it, and I dropped it. She was really drunk, and after an hour or two, she fell into a deep sleep. That's when I made my move. When she drank, she was a very heavy sleeper. Once she was asleep, I knew she wouldn't wake up for anything short of an alien invasion. So, I went through her phone and checked her photos. As I expected, there were no pictures from that night. That struck me as very strange. She had been drinking, and at the very least, she would have taken pictures of the cocktail she ordered. I sat there with her phone, trying to figure out where she had been that night. Then I remembered her friends. The three names she often mentioned were Sarah, Amy, and Jaina. I searched her contacts for those names, nothing. Second red flag. At this point, I was sure nothing was as it seemed. These people didn't exist, and I began to doubt she was even a student. I accessed her email and looked for correspondence with the university. I expected to find emails confirming things like admission, payment, and course registration. I only found 3 emails, one congratulating her on her admission, and 2 reminders to pay the tuition before the semester started. After that, nothing, no emails confirming her payment or congratulating her on completing the admission requirements. By then, it was obvious what was happening. My wife was lying to me about being a student. I won't bore you with the rest, but I accessed the student portal for her university. There was no evidence she had ever logged in. The link was blue on both her phone and laptop. The username and password fields weren't auto-filled with anything, and the site didn't even appear in her browser history. I was furious. What was she doing during the day? What had she done with the money I gave her? After sitting there, fuming for a few minutes, I realized I needed to dig deeper. There were still unanswered questions, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it while she was asleep. So, I started checking her direct messages on social media. It was no surprise, there were no messages with classmates, study groups, or professors. Just messages with people I didn't know. I went through most of them, and they were pretty mundane, until I got to Ma. Ma was different. Their messages dated back months. They started as light flirting, if you could call it that, but quickly escalated to much more explicit conversations. There were messages setting up meeting times. I didn't need a calendar to realize they were seeing each other when she was supposedly in class. There was more. It became quite obvious where the money had gone. She had been spending it on hotel stays and dinners with this guy. Here I was, thinking I was investing in her future, and she was using my money behind my back to sleep with some stranger. Well, maybe she was investing in her future, but in a future that wasn't going to be very profitable for her. I had to hold myself back from waking her up and shaking her right then and there. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was sitting next to a complete stranger. The disbelief I felt was like someone telling me my dog had talked to them. It was impossible, but the evidence was there. My wife wasn't who I thought she was. I couldn't stop scrolling through her messages, even though I'd have preferred to crawl through broken glass rather than continue reading that garbage. But I had no choice, I needed to know. I had already spent too much time in the dark. Sometimes, I wish I had stopped reading right then. At some point, they started talking about me. There were many complaints about the kind of husband I was. She said I was always busy with work and too preoccupied to take her to clubs and parties. Never mind that I was the only one providing for the household and took her out on multiple dates every month. Apparently, that didn't mean anything if I couldn't go out as often as she wanted. Seeing her complain about me to another man enraged me, but it got worse. Mark asked her if she was worried I would find out what she was doing. She responded with a laugh and said I was too weak to leave her, even if I found out. She said I was safe and predictable, and she believed I would just sulk and forgive her because I was too cowardly to leave her. I knew then that she had underestimated me because, at that moment, I considered our relationship over. I wanted to wake her up and scream at her, but it was pointless. She was so drunk that I wouldn't get anything useful out of her. I decided to wait until the morning to confront her with everything I had discovered. I slept on the couch that night. During the night, I calmed down a bit, not enough to forgive her, not even close, but I felt that simply confronting her wasn't enough. I wanted to do something to destroy her emotionally. She needed to feel as miserable as I did at that moment. It's been 2 days since I discovered her lies, and I've started planning a little surprise for our anniversary. It's in 2 weeks. I'll update this post and let you know how it goes. Edit: many people have asked why I'll stay with her for 2 more weeks if I'm planning to end the relationship. First, because I have nowhere to go. I live in a city where I don't have many friends, and my parents don't live here. So, I have no choice but to stay in this house because I can't quit my job right now. Confronting her right away would only make my life more miserable. I'd rather have everything ready with a lawyer before I reveal my surprise. I don't want to give her any hint that I've found out about everything. I don't want her to have any advantage. Besides, this gives me time to prepare, like finding a new place to move to. Living in a hotel isn't exactly cheap. Update 1. The anniversary dinner was a total success, at least for me. I don't think she enjoyed it, but I'm sure she won't forget it anytime soon. It was hard staying under the same roof with that woman for 2 more weeks. I didn't even bother pretending everything was normal, and she noticed. She kept asking what was wrong, but I brushed her off with vague responses. I didn't have the energy to fake being nice to her, and honestly, I enjoyed watching her squirm as she tried to figure out what was bothering me. Luckily, she had no idea that it was because everything was over. She probably thought I was upset over something trivial. My best guess? She assumed it was a midlife crisis or something similar because she kept suggesting we take a vacation. I just told her I was busy with work. Meanwhile, I was busy planning my exit. Finally, our anniversary arrived, though it felt like 2 years instead of 2 weeks. I told her I had something special planned. She lit up at the idea of a fancy dinner and was especially thrilled when I told her I had booked a table at her favorite restaurant. I wanted everything to be perfect for the night I had planned. She went all out getting ready for the dinner. She even asked me how she looked, and I lied, saying she looked great. At that point, I didn't care how she looked. There wasn't an outfit on this planet that could make her beautiful to me. Trust me, I had to lie blatantly because no amount of makeup or a fancy dress could fix her in my eyes. The dinner started off normal enough. We ordered food and wine, made small talk, and she took a few photos. Or rather, she took a few photos. She seemed relaxed, probably thinking the tension between us had faded. After the dessert was served, I decided it was time to get down to business. I handed her the envelope that had been sitting in my jacket pocket all night. At first, she looked excited. She probably thought it was a gift or vacation tickets. Her expression turned to confusion when she opened the envelope and found an invoice. Of course, I knew she wouldn't pay it. It wasn't legally binding or anything. I just wanted to send a message, and judging by her face, she got it loud and clear. Her eyes filled with tears as she stared at the paper and tried to explain herself. I explained that the invoice was for the money I had given her to pay for her tuition, and I expected her to repay it in full. She tried to tell me that she really had paid her tuition, but I cut her off, telling her not to dig herself a deeper hole. Watching her stumble over her words gave me a small sense of satisfaction, I won't lie. People in the restaurant started staring, but I didn't care. I was never coming back to that restaurant, and I was happy to ruin it for her too. Then, I pulled out a large manila envelope from under my seat. I tried to hand it to her, but when she didn't move to take it, I just tossed it onto the table in front of her. She opened it with trembling hands, and her whole body seemed to collapse when she saw what was inside: divorce papers. She went from sobbing to begging in an instant. She reached across the table for my hands and pleaded with me to reconsider. She said she'd pay back the money, that she'd actually go to college, that she'd get a job, anything to avoid the divorce. I asked her why she was so desperate to stay when she had told Mark that I was boring and predictable. I reminded her that she had assured him I'd never leave her. Her tears stopped when she realized I knew everything. She finally understood she was in far deeper trouble than she had thought. It didn't surprise me when she started stammering out excuses. First, she claimed nothing had happened between them, but quickly switched to, "He doesn't mean anything to me," when she realized I probably knew the truth. I put her out of her misery and told her I had read all her messages and sent them to my lawyer. I mentioned that I had wanted to put them all in a third envelope, but I couldn't find one thick enough to hold everything. I wasn't done yet, though. I told her I would be moving out the next day. I had already booked a motel for that night, and the following day I would be getting the keys to my new place and picking up the rest of my things. I had already cancelled the credit cards in my name and stopped depositing into our joint account since I discovered her infidelity. The account was nearly empty by then, good luck paying rent with what little was left. She started causing a scene, but I didn't care anymore. It wasn't my problem. For the first time since I found out the truth, I felt some peace. I felt like I was taking my life back. I left some cash on the table to cover the tip for the restaurant, but the rest of the bill was hers to pay. I told her to enjoy the rest of her night. As I was leaving, I announced to the restaurant that we were getting divorced, kind of like how people announce engagements, but in reverse. I asked everyone to applaud. Only a couple of men, who were probably within earshot of everything, clapped quietly, but when their wives or girlfriends nudged them, they stopped. I wasn't allowed back there after that night. I left her crying at the table, blocked her on everything, and let my lawyer handle all future communication. I didn't want to see her or have anything to do with her anymore. Not that it was going well for her. She didn't have much work experience. Life after the divorce wasn't easy, but I was doing much better without her in the picture. The only time we saw each other in person after that was during the divorce proceedings. She and Mark were the center of attention, and my lawyer wasted no time in bringing up her infidelity every time she tried to ask for too much. We also used her financial betrayal as leverage to fight against any alimony requests. I had already cancelled the credit cards in my name and stopped depositing into our joint account since I discovered her infidelity. The account was nearly empty by then, good luck paying rent with what little was left. Surprisingly, it worked. My lawyer argued there was a case for fraud, and that scared her enough to drop any demand for alimony. I didn't stick around. I moved out of the city and left her behind. I didn't keep in touch, but I heard about her from mutual friends. She couldn't pay her rent and had to move back in with her parents. They threatened to kick her out, and she ended up looking for teaching jobs. Not that it was going well for her. She didn't have much work experience. Life after the divorce wasn't easy, but I was doing much better without her in the picture. Update 2. I'm writing this update because I have news about my ex. It's been quite a while, but here's a brief summary. You might remember that she had enrolled in law classes but never attended. The worst part is that she used my money to meet her lover behind my back. When I found out, I divorced her, and she wanted to come back. The problem is, if you get accepted into university and say you're going but don't attend classes, you still have to pay tuition. No one told Cassie, or maybe she was hoping I would pay for her. The good news is that it wasn't in my name, and the debt is entirely hers. Good luck trying to pay off law school on a teacher's salary. I remember talking with someone in the comments about what she did, and it seemed so Machiavellian on her part. She needed me to believe the story that she was going to study law and become a better person, even though she only became a better person in bed for another man. She needed to convince me, and probably after a few months, she would have said it wasn't for her, and I'd have to pay for what she owed. That is, all the months she supposedly attended but didn't. So, I couldn't be happier that I discovered all of this in time, because I wouldn't have wanted to pay that debt and then find out she was still cheating on me. I think I managed to get out of the building before the bomb exploded. I can't say the same for Cassie. I know she's already dropped out of the university, but it's not like the university doesn't want to collect that debt. For those who said I lost a lot of money anyway because I paid for those months, the reality is that I didn't. Thanks to her infidelity, the divorce was quite favorable for me, more so than it would have been if it had been a mutual decision. So, while I haven't recovered everything, it hasn't been too bad, and the debt I can only estimate must be pretty painful for her now. Now I understand her desperation to come back to me, or rather, to my bank account. On to more interesting news for me, since I don't want to only talk about my ex, I've been seeing someone. Yes, she has her own job and doesn't plan on quitting it. She's already found her career and loves it too much to abandon it for a man. That's a good sign. No, I'm still finding myself, or I think this isn't for me. I'm taking it slow, though. I don't want to jump into another relationship overnight. I want to take my time and see how it develops. She knows this because we've talked about our past relationships, and she thinks it's the best for both of us, since she also had a bad relationship with her ex, who cheated on and used her. I don't know why, but I think her ex would be perfect for someone I know. They'd get along really well. That's all for now. I hope you're all enjoying the new year and had a happy holiday season. I traveled home to spend the holidays with family and just got back a day ago to start the year and get back to work.